We discussed yesterday the absolutely off-the-rails hearing that Marjorie Taylor Greene made quite the appearance in, attacking Dr. Fauci, saying that Fauci should be locked up. Unhinged stuff. Well, that was yesterday's. And I know what you're thinking. If they did such a ridiculous, these MAGA Republicans, political stunt hearing aimed at helping Trump and distracting from their own failures, surely they wouldn't the next day do another one that's absurd. They did. Didn't take any break from the absurdity. And here you have a Judiciary Committee hearing where they're bringing in Attorney General Merrick Garland to, as I'm sure you can assume, beat him up over Trump's legal troubles and try to connect him to all these conspiracy theories. And as I've said before, if these MAGA Republicans are going to make a joke out of their positions of power and the House of Representatives, then as long as they have power, Democrats do need to go in there and make jokes out of Republicans. And sometimes that means stunts of their own. And here you have Democratic Congressman Eric Swalwell doing just that in a perfect fashion, as you're about to see.
And guys, I'm starting to think you're in a cult. That is your right, but it's not your responsibility. I promise you that's not what your constituents would want. So if you believe in states' rights, except when a jury in that state convicts your nominee for president, you might be in a cult. If you claim you back the blue but want to defund the police when the police go to your nominee's house to retrieve national security secrets, you might be in a cult. If you're supporting a guy whose felony convictions prevent him from getting a security clearance, you might be in a cult.
I'm going to really quickly pause your viewing of this video to ask that you subscribe to this YouTube channel. If you're liking the content, one major way you can help to continue growing this show, and that's just clicking that subscribe button. Easy, free, but like I said, it makes a huge difference.
And if the guy you're supporting for president has felony convictions that prevent him from going to Argentina, Australia, Brazil, Cambodia, Canada, Chile, China, Cuba, Dominican Republic, Egypt, Ethiopia, Hong Kong,
my motion
India,
takes precedent.
Indonesia, Iran, Ireland, Israel, Japan, Kenya, Macau, Malaysia, Mexico, Morocco, Nepal, New Zealand, Peru, Philippines, Singapore, South Africa, South Korea, Taiwan, Tanzania, Tunisia, Turkey, Ukraine, United Arab Emirates, and the UK.
The gentleman from Kentucky is recognized for 5 minutes. I'm asking the gentleman.
So desperately trying to cut him off and silence Eric Swalwell, as I guess he was going through all the countries that Trump can't go to now that he's a convicted felon, which is a bonkers thought to consider. But unfortunately for Jim Jordan, his pounding of the gavel sort of added to the drama of it. Israel, Japan, he was sort of hitting it right in sync with the statements of the countries and making it that much more profound, putting a period on the end of each of those statements. And absolutely perfect from Eric Swalwell. Again, I say, in general, if you're told to stop speaking and those are the rules, decorum's great, right? But we've seen the traditional behavior and sort of the way that people will conduct themselves be completely contradicted by many of these MAGA Republicans in ways that are destructive, and they constantly prevent real conversations about policy, real solutions being brought forward to the problems that Americans are facing, because they instead want to spend their time doing this, going after Merrick Garland, trying to help Trump's political ambitions. So if that's the context they're forcing upon Democrats, then within that context, Democrats need to do the best they can to emphasize for the American people how ridiculous this is. And that's what Eric Swalwell was doing there, which you just absolutely love to see. Then you have here Democratic Congressman Cohen making a really interesting point about Matt Gaetz.
I noticed Mr. Gaetz, who took you on first, is not here now. And that's unfortunate because he is living testament to the fact and direct evidence that you have not weaponized the Justice Department. He was investigated for sex trafficking, and while many expected a prosecution, you chose not to prosecute this very active Republican. Is that true? You did not prosecute him?
I'm sorry, I'm not sure what is in the public record and what's not, so I'm just not going to comment on that.
Yeah. And listen, in all fairness to Matt Gaetz, they did decide not to bring charges, and we don't know the behind the scenes of why they made that decision, and we don't know what evidence they did or didn't have. And so I'm not making any authoritative claims about these allegations when it comes to Gaetz. But it didn't look great. And then, as was noted, seemingly the DOJ isn't just in every situation they possibly can trying to hurt Republicans, as is also shown by, which will be the subject of this next clip, if not the one after that, the fact that Democrats, some Democrats who are alleged to be corrupt, are also being prosecuted. So there's not this two-tiered justice system that the whole purpose of this hearing is to portray. Here's Eric Swalwell again.
Mr. Attorney General, last week it was reported that House Ethics Panel subpoenas DOJ for Gaetz records. It was a May 14, 2024 political piece. I'd like to submit it to the record with unanimous consent.
Without objection.
I just want to get this straight. Mr. Gaetz wants the Attorney General to reopen and publicize evidence from an investigation that a Donald Trump-appointed prosecutor closed against President Biden, while at the same time, Mr. Gaetz himself is being protected by the same DOJ policy that is refusing to voluntarily turn over evidence from Mr. Gaetz's sex trafficking investigation. Mr. Attorney General,
Wow. So maybe don't push too hard for that rule to be broken. And then here's the point that I was referring to again with Cohen.
Prosecution of Donald Trump in the state court in New York. As far as weaponization of the department goes, did the Justice Department indict Senator Menendez?
It's a matter of public record, yes.
And he's a Democrat, isn't he?
I'm assuming the answer is yes.
And Henry Cuellar, Justice Department indicted him. He's a Democrat too, isn't he?
It's a matter of public record.
So you've prosecuted Democrats, and as we speak, Hunter Biden, who is the son of the president, is under trial in Delaware. And so you haven't weaponized the Justice Department in terms of hiding and protecting Democrats, Menendez, Cuellar, and Hunter Biden.
The Justice Department follows the facts and the law. We prosecute like cases alike.
Right. And then a generic thing, because he, for good reason, is limited in what he wants to say. Now, it's a brutal point. And then we hear from the likes of Charlie Kirk that the reason even Democrats are being legally held accountable, subjected to the same process that Trump was, is because that's the DOJ trying to prove that they're not biased by doing things against Democrats, even powerful Democrats like Bob Menendez. Or maybe they're just not as biased as you're pretending like they are. And this is one of those issues that really gives you a sense of the difference between the cult-like dedication, as was pointed out by Eric Swalwell, to Trump versus there not being a cult-like dedication to, and not as blind of partisanship with many Democratic, even just voters. Because out in the abyss, even just people out there talking about politics, you don't hear people trying to push witch hunt narratives whenever Democrats get themselves into legal troubles. Even the son of President Joe Biden got himself into legal troubles and allegedly purchased a gun whenever he was still using drugs, which is illegal. And so he's being subjected to our legal process. And so it's a huge contradiction of the narrative. It doesn't change them pushing it, though, which is obviously indicative of the dishonesty. Here's another brutal point being made by Democratic Congressman Ted Lieu about something we heard Colin Cowherd, who I've now referenced a couple times in today's show, something he pointed out, which is that it's not that Trump inevitably was going to be a criminal just by who he hung out with. But now that we know he's a criminal, a convicted felon, it shouldn't shock us, given that so many of the people who worked for him and that Trump surrounded himself with were criminals.
Trump's campaign manager, felon. Trump's deputy campaign manager, felon. Trump's foreign policy advisor, felon. Trump's lawyer, felon. Trump's political advisor, felon. Trump's fundraiser, felon. It is not the fault of the Department of Justice that Donald Trump surrounded himself with criminals. Trump brought that upon himself. One of the things that makes America great is we are ruled by the law, not by...
And going on to make points that we've made many times super important. And he just gave you a few examples. We've gone through the full list, the exhaustive list before, which is showing Trump has long surrounded himself with and was involved, allegedly, in the criminality of a lot of the people who end up going to prison, I would say on his behalf in some of these instances. And so it's not a shock that he's a convicted felon, given who he surrounded himself with and given the evidence that was brought forward. And that should be pointed out because I do think it's another devastating point for sure. Let me know what you thought of yet another hearing backfiring for Republicans in the comments. And if you want to get access to the daily bonus show, become a member, you can do so by clicking that join button below.